everyone, to the League of Legends European Championship. Now, week one of the LEC had it all. A new studio, upsets, fallen kings, rookies popping off, and much, much more. Now first, as to who was the winner of the first weekend, there's no doubt that G2 Esports and Misfits started out with a bang. So much so that they are being dubbed title contenders after only 2 games. G2's caps and perks were a terrifying double threat, crushing the composition in week one, alleviating any doubts we may have had about the roster. And that revamped Misfits roster, well, they dominated SK and Rogue on the back of an exceptional LEC debut for Gorilla. Now, secondly, out with the old and in with the new, SK and Origin. Although I guess technically it's back in with the old again. No matter what, these legacy EU organizations each took down reigning champions Fnatic, one of them even twice. SK and Selfmade showed that there's even more talent to be found in the LVP, and the rookies showed up big time. And as if that wasn't enough, Origin is back, baby, and so is OG Mithy, beating Fnatic and going 1-1 in their opening week. Now, you already guessed it, Fnatic's 2019 season didn't start off as strong. In fact, for me, they were the most disappointing team in week one, going 0-2. And that is a shocker, if you consider where they were just 3 months ago. Now, although Fnatic fans may despair, it is only 2 games, and if there's one thing we know about Reckless and crew, it is that they can come back with a vengeance. TLDR, week one gave us Fallen Kings, the rebirth of SK and Origin, rookies popping off, underdogs, upset, and possibly 2 super teams in 1 league. Now, I think we are in for one hell of a ride this split.
Hell yes, we are, Sjokz. Hello, everybody, and welcome. I'm Trevor Quickshot Henry, joined by Indiana, Froskurinn, and Black. 2 super teams. Is there 2 or is there 1? Frosk, that's the question I'm going to pose to you. And I'm going to be asking fans at home, as you just heard, 2 super teams, G2 or Misfits, both destroyed their opponents in week 1. We are going to discuss which one can claim that title, and you guys at home, I want you to jump in. Go onto chat right now and start spamming. Who do you believe is the European super team? Use G2 or MSF? Spam that in chat right now. Frosk, I'm going to turn to you and say, set me up. Talk me through why you think G2 could be that super team.
I feel like you just gave me the softball. This is the easiest one, and it has to start in that mid laner with Caps. This guy is MVP of Summer. He moved from Fnatic. He's now on G2. And not only did you take the MVP, but you took one of the other best mid laners of Europe in Perks and smashed him down into that bot lane. You will never find more star-studded talent across the roster than G2 Esports. And you can see that in their damage done. Across the board, they were maxing out records doing damage. So it wasn't just about the hard carry of Caps, it was the hard carry of everyone. And that's before we even try to beat them in the draft, Trevor. We all saw the Seek and Destroy Karthus composition, where all Jankos had to do was press R to win, and no one seems to know how to deal with this.
Well, I know how you deal with the pick and ban phase, but when you see if anyone can actually challenge them on the Rift, I mean, I think you're 100% right. Picking up Caps and perks is a terrifying synergy and duo for G2 Esports, and maybe this is how it gets them back to the top of the title. They picked up those wins last week, but I have to turn to the other potential super team in Misfits Gaming. They came into the year with a star-studded lineup both on the Rift, but crucially, what they have over G2 Esports is they upgraded their support staff off the Rift.
Yes.
Adding the likes of Pumandu, the organization also got an injection of the superpower that we've talked about. Last week, we saw Hansama and Gorilla. Should we call them Gohan, maybe? The bot lane carry duo stepped up. The Draven on day 1, Lucian on day 2. They obliterated everybody in their wake, Frosk, and I can't wait to see what else they do.
They went absolutely Super Saiyan. And correct me if I'm wrong, Trevor, not only did they just smash everyone, but they did so in pre-15 minutes in style.
They absolutely did. I'm going to put a number to it, because you're new here, right? The impressiveness of
just
the
started.
stat. In the entire time that the European League of Legends has been competing at this level, no team has been able to make a larger gold lead at 15 minutes than what Misfits did last week against SK. They broke their previous record from the summer split of 2018 to hold the largest gold lead in the early game in the history of Europe. Those are the 2 super teams. Fans at home are currently voting for G2 with 58% of the vote. You have a little bit more time to lock it in. I vote for Misfits. I think the organizational support and upgrade upgrade makes them a slightly more potential title holder.
Long term.
Frosk, where do you sit and why?
I mean, frankly, you look at this, it seems like the fans are going for G2. I say it doesn't even matter. And that sounds like a cop-out, but the reality is that the LEC is actually sitting where in debate you have 2 super teams, and that's before you even include Fnatic. I know that they had a rough fall start, but let's say Fnatic turns to form, suddenly you've got a world championship team as well as 2 super teams. The LEC is looking great.
It absolutely is. I can't wait to see these 2 teams continuing to compete, but that's not all you guys are going to see outside of the super teams, because there's also a whole bunch of unique picks that we've been seeing from the current meta. Froskurinn, walk us through some of the champions that really ruled the Rift during week 1 on the Spring Split.
Okay, thanks, Trevor. Now, let's take a look at some of the standout champions of the new LEC season. I'm going to start with Vayne. Now, Vayne has been played in 2 different positions in the LEC, mid by Nukeduck and bot by Attila, utilizing both the Kleptomancy and Hail of Blade keystones. Now, this versatility in her keystones, her strong 1v1 dueling presence, and the flexibility in draft make Vayne a powerful counterpick that's sure to see more action across the globe. Now, next up is Cassiopeia, snaking through the ban phase only once in the LEC so far. Now, while she was played in mid by Nukeduck, Cassio has made her real preseason breakout in the bot lane position. Now, how it works is she maxes her Q poison for easy wave push while maintaining a damage threat because Twin Fangs can constantly proc that Comet Keystone. With a dominant lane phase, hyper-scaling damage, and excellent monster burn, Cassio is sure to stay high priority and on the ban bench. And finally, it's the G2 special with Karsus Jungle. Guys, all it says in the prompter is press R. Can we scroll? No, okay, and press Q. Scroll. Oh, okay, hold on, Mark. Perfect. Here we go. Karthus Jungle puts a timer on the game as his Requiem ultimate will end team fights before they begin. Now, he is fragile in the early jungle, and he doesn't see many gank windows open until level 4 when he has that wall of pain. So be sure to watch how he's paired with strong laners to keep him safe until he can take over games. And for more on Flex Picks, we're actually going to send it to a very special guest.
Thank you, Frosker. Welcome, my dudes. Hello, Berlin. How is it going? I'll take it from here. Now, have you ever been walking down the street, you know, minding your own business, then bam, you just got flexed on. You thought that the Aurelia was supposed to be in the mid lane. You were like, whoa, 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 now she's in the bot lane. And you're like, whoa, 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 now she's in the top lane. You're like, whoa, 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 now she's in the jungle? What just happened? Don't worry, my dudes. Your boy Flexius is here to help. Now, the current meta revolves all around flexing. Why? Well, I'm very glad that you asked. While there is no greater feeling than flexing on some noobs, it is also about getting your dudes the strongest and best matchups possible. Think about it. If you have strong winning lanes, that means your jungler gets to flex on whatever he wants. Vision, Dragon, Roman, it's done. It's done, and it is done. All you need is pressure. Ooh. Now, how do you guarantee that pressure? Well, that is an excellent question, Flexius. All you need are Flex Picks. Now, you need champions that can move around in the draft. So remember, strong lanes is what you need. So to guarantee those strong lanes, you gotta flex. Now, let's take a look at some flex picks. Bad flex picks? Skarner. Skarner, he can't go mid. He can't go bot. He can only go in the jungle. Skarner, he's a bad flex pick. He can't flex on anyone. Now, you wanna know a good flex pick? It's Nocturne. Nocturne, he can go in the mid lane. He can go in the jungle. He can also go up top. He can flex over anyone. Now that you have been flexucated, it's time to toss back the Sjokz and the gang. But don't worry, your boy Flexius, he'll be back. Woo! Let's go! Woo!
Oh, thank you, Flexius. Okay, I just gotta say it.
This is why you invited BT for this.
I think I have a crush, guys. This is wonderful. I learned something. I got to look at his bot. It was great. Wow.
I'm actually crying from laughter.
So good.
It was
so
exceptional and it was educational.
Yeah.
One might say it was flexucational.
Oh, yes. Alrighty. Well, The other regions already think we're crazy over here. So we thought, you know what, let's just go the extra mile. The meta in the LEC, honestly, is also going wild. But the same can be said for some other regions. And let's start with the LCK. And there, things are very interesting. New challengers are emerging to take on the old guard. It's almost like all the new teams that have showed up, Griffin, Sandbox, Damwon, they are looking insanely good straight off the gates in the LCK.
Yeah, it's the rise of the new blood and the rise of the rookies. It's just like you said, until Damwon actually lost to Griffin, the 3 new promoted teams were undefeated in the LCK. And it's basically just kind of that last remaining old guard of the super team and SKT left. Otherwise, it's the bold, aggressive, new wave, next generation of LCK that is smashing that region.
It makes me really excited because last year the LCK had its worst performance as a region in the history of our game. The slow inability to adapt to the meta that the world was playing. And now these new youthful teams, these new challengers are rising up. And watching Sandbox take down SKT earlier in the week, it got me very excited, not only for the rookie class of LCK, but also how will FLICKR and SKT bounce back? How will these legacy organizations like KT Rolster as well step up to challenge these new young guns?
Let's take it slow on KT Rolster right now.
Okay? I'm trying to be hopeful.
It does make this week very important, though, because SKT will face both Griffin as well as Damwon, so they have kind of that last gauntlet if they want to go through the Elite Four.
Yeah, definitely. So very interesting matches to look forward to. Same can be said for the LPL. Now, this is, of course, the region that had huge success internationally, and they are aiming even higher this year. Aiming higher, what does that mean? I guess it means that there's 2 teams playing against each other from the LPL in the World Finals.
While you were right, I mean, Europe will be next to them, right? Okay, or maybe there'll be 2 European teams, but that's what they're going to try to do anyway.
No, but how do they go higher after this, after such a good year for the LPL?
It continues to expand. So the LPL has 6 different arenas. It has a home and away system right now. 16 teams now stacked into the region, but I want to focus fire a little bit and just focus on 3. It starts with Invictus Gaming. Guess what? Surprise, the world champions are still doing world championship stuff, and they're smashing everyone in their path. But it's not the same that can be said for RNG.
No, it's not, and that's because Uzi's not with them, all right? Uzi will be rejoining the team after the Chinese New Year, currently just off the roster. I'm excited to see what he will bring back to this team. Feed the puppy, as it were. It can definitely be a way for RNG to get back on top, but it's just very exciting to see IG continue to do well when you look at the likes of Fnatic, who've been struggling locally. And also, it was the most successful year that the LPL and China have had internationally speaking, with MSI and the World Championship victory. So I want to see if they can maintain the lead. I'm hoping that it's not replacing a Korean dynasty with the Chinese dynasty. I want competition. I want teams trading from another, but it's an interesting start to 2019.
Exactly. And the final team that you need to focus on is Suning Gaming. Now, everyone should know the LMS superstars in Maple and Sword Art. Guess what? They're now over in the LPL, and they're joined by SMLZ and Xiaowel. So the LPL is now making another super team, a 3rd one, if you will, if you count RNG and Invictus Gaming. And they're right now my hopefuls that everyone should pay attention to when we roll down to MSI.
Yeah, that is definitely scary, but if we played the World Championship right now and it was Europe, LPL, what would you pick?
I would actually say G2.
Yes, I'm on board with that. That was the correct answer, but I actually wasn't ready for it.
I was trying to trick you, but
also, you pointed between us. I'm like, is that me or Frosk? I'm like, oh!
He's like, Misfits! Misfits!
See, we've established then who really wanted to answer that question and who wants our team to do good. No, fantastic. Well, here in the LEC, though, we are counting down towards the 2nd week with G2 and Misfits, the team you have such high hopes for. Currently undefeated at the top, and a lot of interesting movements in the belly also of, that's maybe a weird way to put it, but under the top teams.
Yeah, I mean, it's exciting to see, of course, G2 and Misfits going undefeated. Last week, Fnatic being defeated, but now this is where we're going to start to delineate the differences between playoff contenders and hopefuls and, 7, 8, 9, 10, the bottom of the table. I want to see how these matches play out.
I love that image of Belly of the Beast, if you will, in LEC, and the fact that it's Splice, Vitality, and Fnatic. Yes, it's only week 1, but that, again, goes to show how strong this region is right now, because those 3 names is the bottom of the standing is unthinkable.
It is, and of course, we'll see many more games this weekend, which will hopefully inform us of the power balance. So let's take a look of what we've got coming up tonight. OG versus Misfits is, of course, one of the games we've got our eyes on at the end of the day.
One of the super team contenders, and also how good are Origin, right?
Really?
Last week, Misfits, I think, had 2 victories against teams that are expected to be lower down the table. So now they get to come up against a stronger organization, stronger individual players, and then we can see whether or not that gold lead at 15 minutes can be broken against OG. I've got an emotional investment in this matchup as well, and I want to see exactly who's going to come out on top.
Yeah, SK versus Sjokz, I've also got my eye on that one, because that is one that is going to tell me a lot more about the possibility of playoff contention or top 3 contention of these 2 teams.
Yeah, for me, I love the vision. We'll get to talk about it a little bit later in the day, but I'm a huge fan behind SK and Sjokz. I think they're both very intelligent teams, and normally you don't see that type of advanced macro or vision play from brand new rosters and brand new players.
Still not easy to predict what is going to happen, but we did have to because we were in this prediction game. And also going into the split, we had a new challenger approaching. His name is Statsbot. Its name, Statsbot.
Good catch.
Its name.
Good catch.
Was feared as the Terminator of predictions, set to become the next superior analyst after the fish show. However, though, he's not doing too well. He's giving us hope that humans do have a chance at beating the machines because he sucks. Like, he was not doing very well for now. Only 3 points. So let's take a look. I'll start off maybe. I put Vitality over Fnatic in this one. I think it's going to take a little more for Fnatic to come back, and I have trust in Vitality, but of course, I'm completely unsure.
I think it's really easy for fans to look at the 0-2 start from Fnatic, and it was very disappointing compared to their expectations. But if you look back at those games and really deep dive on the VODs, Fnatic weren't behind for a majority of the series.
You're telling I'm full of... Like, you're saying that I'm... no, just kidding.
No, I'm just saying that I'm trying to inject some hope right now. If you're strong on Vitality, I'll come back, I'll defend my prediction.
I will say I'm very interested to see the SK Sjokz game because it'll give us a lot more indication to, you know, what Schalke's level is, what SK with 3/5 Mad Lions will perform to.
Yeah.
And also, I bought into week 1 hype with Misfits. I was impressed with how well they played against teams that I'm expecting to most likely not make it to playoffs. So coming up against Origin, this was a little bit more of a difficult prediction in my mind of who was going to come out on top. Frosk is definitely on the Origin route. And I'm looking forward to seeing where I can make up this point difference with the last 2 games of the day.
Yeah, we'll get to talk about it in a bit. But is there one thing you want us to remember if we're going into that Misfits OG game?
It was the fact that Misfits, I believe, are on red side, so they have counter pick. And I think that's really important for the matchup.
All right, well, we'll check up on that as we go into that last game. Of course, there is also our match of the day, which will be our first one, Fnatic versus Vitality. And let's see what Broxah had to say when Drakos spoke to him earlier.
Thank you, Sjokz. I am now joined by Broxah. Broxah, it was a rough first week for Fnatic. A lot of people out there on the internet already saying Fnatic, bottom of the table, they're doomed. What's your take on kind of the first week?
I feel like I've been in this position so many times before. I think ever since I joined Fnatic, both my first summer split, last year, both spring and summer, we always started pretty poorly. Like, that's the reality. For some reason, Fnatic always does poorly. Throughout the middle of the split, we're getting a little better, and then at the end, we usually become one of the strongest teams. And I'm confident that it's going to be the same case now. Why exactly it's always this way, I'm not sure. But yeah, we definitely didn't have a great showing last week, and we're all here now ready to prove that we don't belong in the bottom.
Absolutely. When can Fnatic fans kind of expect Fnatic back to be at that full strength level?
I feel like that's pretty hard to say. As I already mentioned, we generally need a bunch of weeks or maybe even a month to play at a high level for whatever reason. I'm not even sure why. And yeah, like I just feel like we just need to get back on track together. We need to get used to playing with each other, get back into all our old habits and routines, the ones we used at Worlds that took us so far. And once we have everything set in stone again, then I feel like we're going to be back at the top.
Now with your new player Nemesis on the lineup, this is a guy that I know you personally vouched for and believed in. Do you feel like that puts more pressure on you every time you set foot on stage with this guy to kind of make sure that he's shining and doing his best?
I don't really think so. Obviously, I am a decent part of why Nemesis ended up joining our team, but at the same time, this guy seemingly was the best rookie out there. He has been doing a really, really good job in Spain on Mad Lions, and he just, you know, he's a really good player, and I'm sure that he's gonna step up and show the world that I was right and that Fnatic was right about him being the new superstar.
All right, well, I'm excited to see what he can do up against Vitality today. Are you feeling confident in your first matchup this week?
I'm pretty confident. Vitality is always a pretty interesting team to go up against due to their really explosive playstyle. So I'm sure it's going to be a fun match, and yeah, we'll see what happens. But I'm confident that even though it's going to be explosive, I'm sure we're going to take the win in the end.
All right, well, thank you, Broxah, and good luck in your match today. Back to you guys at the analyst desk.
Wow, thank you very much, guys. Broxah there, for me, really stepping up since Worlds and maybe even before. It's like the captain and the guy you can speak to when it's not going too well for that team. And he said, It's going to be fine, but
Yes.
it may take a while.
What I'm a real big fan of is Broxah has also completely learned to control the camera, the microphone, his own opinions. You compare this guy, his growth both on the Rift, off the Rift, on camera, off camera, it is amazing. I still think he was the most impressive and my favorite jungler from Worlds last year. I want that guy back on our stage.
Yeah, I want him to show up. Of course, Vedius, you joined us because Froskurinn has gone over to the caster desk. I have to say, Vedius, I'm still super, super impressed by, you know, your gym routine and how everything is
My
going.
gym routine?
Yeah, but we saw someone before, Flexius.
Oh,
I mean, I fell in love. Like, I actually fell in love with
that
Flexius.
guy
Oh
is
my
like, that's my
gosh.
ultimate body image. I
Flexius,
feel
if you are watching, call me.
No,
To
call
fish
me,
us out
call
the
me,
scene.
call me.
Yeah.
What is this?
Man, this Flexius guy sounds great. I hope I get to meet him sometime.
All right, so let's get back to our first matchup of the day, although I would love to keep talking about Flexius. Fnatic versus Vitality, and we just heard it from Broxah. Fnatic, they didn't live up to expectations in week 1, and we have big expectations, and why not? There are back-to-back champions. They were on the World Championship final stage, and Vitality also didn't get off to the best start. So it's a similar storyline for both of these teams, but let's start with Fnatic. How much are we reading in to what happened in week 1?
So for me, I'm not too concerned. I kind of echo what Frosk said earlier on the analyst desk, which is very much that I feel that they actually played pretty well overall. There's definitely some issues within the team that need to be resolved, but I still feel like in the mid game, I saw a lot of the World's Fnatic that I was hoping to see, even if they couldn't quite turn it into wins.
And it's really important to note that, yes, they've kept 4/5 of the roster. This is something I said a lot last week. The 1 out of 5 members that they've changed was the cornerstone player. It was the man that everybody rallied behind. It was the tip of the spear. A spear is not going to hurt anybody if it's blunt, if that piece of the weapon is missing, and that's what this team has to bounce back and learn from. I think as a team, there was a lack of synergy that really left me with a sour taste in my mouth. The first game that they almost lost to SK with the Galio and the Nocturne, I needed more ultimates, I needed more proactive plays, and I needed them earlier in the game. So that put a big cause for concern. But they did quell some of those fears in the remake.
And that's why my eyes turned towards Nemesis, because he was the piece that was changed in this puzzle, and I feel like that synergy is just something that will take time for him to fit in. He had the kind of debut that was the opposite of what we saw from Caps, who was looking for solo kills left, right. He was over-aggressive. To me, it felt like Nemesis just took a step back. He wanted to make sure that he was solid, he was consistent, and unfortunately, for this kind of Fnatic where they're all about aggression, from Summer when they were like dominating in the early games, snowballing games, I just think it's going to take them a little bit of time for him to fit into that playstyle.
Let me ask you this. If we all agree that Nemesis is a different player, and you can still be very good and not be an as aggressive player, and he is not changing, but the synergy gets to a very high level, but they now have to play in a system where, albeit very synergized, they are just going to have a passive mid laner. Do you think they can reach the same heights as last year?
Oh, it's so early to ask that question.
I'm sorry.
Instinct right now is no. However, I don't think the gap is going to be gigantic right now. I need to see more from Nemesis. I need to see this team develop their synergy and work together. And look, if this team develops communication and an understanding of how to play the game, they could be better. But I just have so much love in what Caps could do and what value he could bring to the team that it's going to take a lot of teamwork to overcome the individual strength.
Domestically, in regards to your question, I think they could achieve the top of Europe. Internationally, I think it will take longer for them to get to that point. But I still have all the faith that this team can kind of reach those same heights. I'm concerned about how they'll fit into the meta with so many more mages appearing in the bot side. Can Reckless adapt? Will Nemesis be able to find his place? I'm not entirely sure, but I'm still confident that with a bit more time, Nemesis will be fighting against the Nuke Ducks, the Jizukes, and the Capses that we have here in
And
Europe.
also the pedigree that Fnatic as an organization have had throughout the years. We expect them to come back out on top, but will it be today? We don't know. They're up versus Vitality, and Vitality, they also really want to win because we came into the split thinking that these might be title contenders. They had a breakout year throughout all of 2018. They did fantastic at Worlds, and how do we put it? Week 1, it was neither here nor there, right? They were 1-1. They made some mistakes, but how are they going to live up to these high expectations that they now have going into 2019?
Well, it starts by making less individual mistakes and just simply piloting your champions better. When I watched Vitality last week, I did not see the Jizuke that was the Italian stallion at Worlds. I did not see Attila really stepping up in lane on that Vayne game on day 2. So I want to see better individual plays from each individual team member. That in turn will help shore up some of the mistakes and the weaknesses I saw from last week. I'm not ready to write them off yet. They have another jungle change. This is the third time in, call it 7 months. So there is still growing pains and learning. But once I see the players get back to the original form, then I'll have a better idea of where they stand in the greater picture.
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting compare and contrast the two teams, because when you look at this Vitality squad, from a synergy perspective, I think it's difficult to judge because the individuals are falling apart.
Yeah.
Whereas for Fnatic, the individuals seem to actually be there. They just can't quite fit the pieces in together. So coming into this week, you're kind of looking at both these teams. Can Fnatic now work more as a unit versus Vitality? Will we see a return to form of many of the players that shook heads and kind of turned heads, rather, at the World Championship?
And it is such an interesting matchup because it is going to tell us so much about the future for the split for both these teams. So I want to know from you guys, what are the win conditions for Team Vitality versus this Fnatic?
Well, I'm going to jump in first, of course, because I have been on the Vitality hype train a little bit. I want to see the individual players step up, just clean up their play, slightly less mistakes. And I would like if Vitality could enable Jizuke, whether Jacktroll or Mowgli are playing through mid, because I think if they poke pressure and make Nemesis struggle a little, it can put the team on a little more tilt than maybe if they were going to attack the likes of Whipple or Reckless.
It's very similar to the strategy Origin took. You know, guarantee nuke duck the counter pick, attack the lane that they think is the weakest right now, this early in the split. I completely agree, Quickshot. I think it's an effective strategy for Vitality.
And then for Fnatic, what are we looking at? I think I can guess.
Well, so for me, I'm looking, I want to see more of an early game impact from this team. I feel like that they were very slow compared to what we saw at the World Championship, and a lot of that responsibility does fall on Broxah, but I also think they looked best when they're on these lane-dominant champions, when Broxah gets his Lee Sin, when Nemesis was on a Kali, when Reckless is on Lucian. These are the kind of champions I want to see Fnatic stick with so that they can improve in terms of their early game and kind of stick it to Vitality in these early stages of play.
And when you looked at Fnatic's 3 games last week, I felt for the first 15 to 20 minutes, there was a little bit of nerves, a little bit of
100%.
Tempered aggression. And I don't want to see that. I like the Fnatic that was in your face, that was just running at you and making plays happen. And that's what I'd like to see from them today. Disrupt Vitality, make them make those individual mistakes like they saw last week, and that's how Fnatic can take over.
Yeah, I agree. And I think we saw glimpses of it, right?
Yes.
With both teams, both Vitality and Fnatic, but both of them are looking towards the title. So one win on the board against these teams would be very good for either of them. That didn't make any sense. It would be great if Vitality wins. It would be great if Fnatic wins as well, because they are en route to that title possibly. We're going to be kicking off week 2 with our match of the day as the reigning champions Fnatic fight to bounce back after a shocking 0-2 start.
They're bad company.
You don't really realize, what you have in the moment. You take everything for granted and you just kind of see yourself as a champion. But now that we are struggling here and it's hard to see yourself as a champion, it's nice to look back and appreciate what you had. And right now we're in a really dire situation. We're 0-2. So I think I need to spend all of my effort figuring out how we can make this work.
SK Gaming are moments away from taking down Fnatic.
Origin 5 men strong, open up hell, and Reckless and Broxah can do nothing about it. Origin write the next page in their history by beating Fnatic.
I mean, this year I'm 100% that I can perfectly be the best ADC in Europe. He's been the top for too long, man. It's time for a chance.
Begging for peace.
I've never really given up on anything in my life, and I don't want League of Legends to be the first thing that I give up on. Now it feels like I should have just trusted myself, because in the end that's, the person you can trust the most, yourself.
Just deliver it to him!
I can tell you for sure that this year I need to step up, otherwise we're not going to win much. So it's probably about time I got back on the high horse and just played a couple of Tristana games.
I think we're just gonna be the new kings, honestly. I think Vitality is just gonna take it all.
Welcome to our match of the day and week 2 of the LEC split.